Call the meeting to order, Chairman.
Yes. Good evening, all. Meeting is called to order. Surgeon's prayer by Dr. Scott.
O God, I am a surgeon. Give me steady hands to hold the knife and to cut precisely. Give me sharp eyes to look into the field of surgery. Give me clear mind to make correct decisions on the table. Give me a shrewd assistant and an efficient nurse to work with me. Let me have a good relationship with my patients and their relatives. Let the relatives know that I am doing the very best I can to the patient. Let their family have confidence in me as they wait outside my consultation. Let them not be excited while I work on the patient inside the theater. Some people say I am the greatest surgeon. Some others say I am next to God. But I know to my heart I am a mere mortal working with knife, and you are the greatest healer of all. O God, bless me to serve humanity with piety.
Respected Chief Guest, Dr. Parveen Bhatia, New Delhi, and today's guest of honor, Dr. Ebenezer Bensam, Secretary Naru ASI, Dr. Ajin Manova, my dear senior members and colleagues. As you all know, due to lockdown, we have not able to conduct meetings since last 3 months. We decided to conduct monthly meetings as webinars from this month till September, as this is the first webinar meeting. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you all in today's webinar. First of all, I extend my hearty welcome to Dr. Parveen Bhatia, Medical Director, Global Hospital, New Delhi, who has accepted to deliver Dr. Shivakumar Hospital Endowment Oration 2020 in spite of his hectic schedule. Welcome you, sir. Next, I am proud to welcome my dear colleague, Dr. Ebenezer Bensam, today's guest of honor and Chairman, Tamil Nadu ASI. I also welcome the chairpersons of today's oration, Dr. Sabu Jayasegaran and Dr. Ubaharam. Last but not the least, I welcome all the senior members and dear colleagues who will make this webinar a grand success. Welcome one and all. Now, I would like to call upon our Secretary, Dr. Ajin, to read the Secretary's report.
Good evening, everybody. So, this is a report for the CME and installation of chairman and office bearers of 2020-21. The February meeting of the Association of Surgeons of India Nauru City branch and Dr. Muthukarapalli Oration 2020 was held on 7th of February 2020 at Hotel Pioneer Grand Palace, Nagarkoil, under the chairmanship of Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran, chairman of the branch. Dr. Scott read the surgeon's prayer. Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran welcomed the audience. Dr. J. Ajin Manova, secretary, read the minutes of the previous meeting, and it was approved. Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran requested Dr. P. Sendil Kumar and Dr. Johnson to be the chairpersons for Dr. Muthukarapalli Oration 2020. Dr. Johnson read the citation of the orator, Dr. Sarparajan, who is a consultant surgical oncologist from Apollo Hospital, Madurai. The citation was handed over to him by the chairman, secretary, and the chairpersons. Dr. Sarparajan delivered Dr. Muthukarapalli Oration 2020 on use of staplers in surgery. The memento and certificate of appreciation was presented to the orator by the chairman, secretary, and the chairperson. The memento to the chairpersons was handed over by Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran, chairman of the branch. Dr. J. Ajin Manova, secretary, read the annual report for the year 2019 and it was approved. Outgoing chairman address was given by Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran. Installation of Dr. Muthukarappan as chairman of Nauru City branch of ASI for the year 2020 was done by Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran. Chief guest Dr. J.W. Ebenezer Bensam, chairman, Tamil Nadu ASI, felicitated the outgoing chairman Dr. Ajit Raghuvaran and installed the office bearers of Nauru City branch of ASI for 2020-21. Dr. Muthukarappan gave the acceptance speech. The installation ceremony was graced by the past, immediate, and present chairman of Nauru City branch of ASI. Dr. P. Sendil Kumar, treasurer of the branch, delivered the vote of thanks, and the meeting came to close and was adjourned. The meeting was sponsored by Dr. Muthu Karpan. The meeting was attended by 31 members of our branch. Thank you. Sir, unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The case presentation. First case by Dr. Anand, penetrating injury of neck.
Anand, start there.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I'll be reporting a case of penetrating injury to the neck.
A lot of echo there. Go close to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I'll be presenting a case of penetrating injury to the neck. We had a 22-year-old male presenting to us with a history of RTA. Following that, he had sustained injury to the neck, and he came to our emergency department with a small towel compressing his side of the neck with drowsiness. And on receiving, he was on hypovolemic shock, and we immediately shifted him with on the ICU bed itself to the operating room, and on revealing the towel, there was profuse bleeding everywhere. And on exploring the wound, he was found to have a great vessel injury in the left anterior triangle, extending from the midline up to the posterior triangle. He had an injury of the left internal jugular, anterior jugular, and external jugular vein. And we immediately sent a word for the vascular surgeon. And meanwhile, we tried to control the bleeding by applying the hemostats. Proximal and the distal control was achieved of the external jugular vein, and the middle thyroid vein and the anterior jugular vein are also involved. Are also controlled, and the control after following that, the external the proximal and distal control of the external jugular vein was achieved by ligation, and the external jugular vein was sutured in continuity using 2O silk. And the left sternocleidomastoid muscle was also found to be avulsed after thorough lavage, and the approximation of the muscle was done. Following that, the wound looked like this. And on further exploration, there were few pieces of glasses which were removed, which was the cause of the injury. Since the patient had a RTA by a motor vehicle, a car, which has impaled him to this situation. So these were the foreign bodies which were required from the wound. And we left the wound open in the view of as a damage control procedure, and in view of delayed primary closure later. Post-operatively, he didn't develop any CNS related symptoms of increased raised intracranial pressure or any stroke, and except for the few lung signs because of the massive transfusion he is underway. And after extubation, patient complained of hoarseness of voice, and he said there was a change in the tone of his voice. And on ENT consultation, which was found to have a vocal cord palsy of the left vocal cord was paramedian in position. The right cord was mobile with a compensatory hypertrophy. And this is the state of the wound after 1 month post-op following split skin grafting. So coming to penetrating neck injury, which is defined as any neck injury which violates the platysma. So it is defined like that. Then this is the course of IJV. Since our patient had an injury, it's a direct continuation of the sagittal sinus, and it has 2 bulbs. And these were the tributaries of the IJV: pharyngeal vein, facial vein, lingual vein, and superior and middle thyroid vein. And it ends and it joins with the subclavian vein to form the brachiocephalic vein. And these were the superficial and deep relations which we need to know. And so superficially, that is an anterolateral side, it is related to the spinal accessory nerve, occipital artery, and posterior auricular artery. So in case of a penetrating injury of the neck, so these arteries can lead to the profuse bleeding. And posteriorly, it is related to the transverse process of the atlas, rectus capitis lateralis, scalenus group of muscle, and in the root of the neck to the great vessels like subclavian artery and vertebral artery, and the nerve, phrenic nerve, and the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Medially, it is related to the carotid sheath contents, the common carotid artery, the vagus nerve, and the other thyroid gland, and the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So the injuries can be classified according to the zones. There are 3 zones in the neck, starting from the most caudal position, zone 1, which extends from the sternal notch up to the cricoid cartilage, and zone 2 extends from the cricoid cartilage up to the angle of mandible, and zone 3 extends from the angle of mandible up to the base of skull. So the facial planes are also important in case of a penetrating neck injury like this, because the hematoma or the air tracts can go up to the mediastinum and can cause mediastinitis, and the bleedings can displace the prevertebral muscles anteriorly and is associated with vertebral body fractures. So before planning for any surgical intervention, we need to keep this also in mind. And in plain X-ray images, the esophageal injuries can present or show the air tracking in these retropharyngeal space, and it's a surgically important space. These are the hard signs and soft signs. 90% of the people with penetrating neck injury presents with these signs, like airway compromise, expanding or pulsatile hematoma, and hemorrhagic shock due to bleeding, and neurological deficit if the carotid artery is involved, and massive subcutaneous emphysema. And 10% of the people, remaining 10%, can present with soft signs like hemoptysis and difficulty in breathing and swallowing with subcutaneous or mediastinal air, along with the vascular bruit artery. So to diagnose these injuries, we can start with a traditional physical examination that itself can reveal 70% of these injuries, and then cervical C-spine, cervical spine X-ray, then X-ray chest, which will hemo and pneumothorax, and duplex ultrasound to check for any vascular injury. In case of esophageal injury, OGD can be done, and laryngoscopy in case of if the nerve injury is present. The gold standard investigation is CT angiography. And coming to management, penetrating neck injury can be managed like if the patient is hemodynamically unstable with hard signs, provided we have the necessary equipment, we can go straight away for operative exploration. If the patient is hemodynamically stable, we can, according to the zone it's involved, we can do further investigations like CT angiogram along with other investigations, then proceed for the surgery. And especially in zone 3 injuries, which is difficult to explore, we can use endovascular procedures and angioembolization. And in asymptomatic individuals or minimal symptoms, we can proceed according to the investigations, or we can observe. Then if the patient develops any of the hard signs or continues to be worse, we can proceed for the operative management. So to conclude, emergency exploration for patients with hard signs should be done. And if the patient has an impaled foreign body in situ, we should never pull out the foreign body and shouldn't probe the wound, either using finger or using any instruments. Nowadays, they say that this zonal classification has become obsolete, but this classification still works for operative management of the vascular injuries. So some questions need to be answered following this. To define the penetrating neck injury is any injury which violates the platysma, and if the patient has any C-collar, which needs to be removed to look into the thorough examination of the wound. And we should never pull out any foreign body if it's still impaled in the wound. And prior to exploration of the wound, it should always be done in an operating room with all necessary equipments like vascular clamps and vascular surgeon if it's available. Before arranging any of this, it's not recommended to explore the wound. In our case, luckily we had our vascular surgeon on call. Then with his help, we managed to save this patient. We managed to save this patient as a team. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anand.
Thank you, sir.
Case 2, obstructed giant parastromal hernia, what a general surgeon should know. I would like to call Dr. Katla Vishnu Chantrika, Dr. N.T. Jayaseeran Hospital.
I think it's on. Yes, can.
You're on.
I think I have to unmute them.
You are on, madam. You can carry on.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to present a case of obstructed giant parastomal hernia in an obese male. He is a 37-year-old male who had an RTA in 2013, and he had blunt injury abdomen pelvis with burst perineum. And at that time, he had undergone a sigmoid loop colostomy. Later on, after 1.5 years, he had a parastomal hernia. Here he presented with a abdominal pain and vomiting with an irreducible mass at the previous sigmoid loop colostomy site with severe tenderness. There was anal stenosis on rectal examination because of his burst perineal injury. And then here we see the parastomal hernia is a very large. It is very giant, and it almost looked like a second abdomen. And he was in obstruction. And then we immediately did a CT emergency. We did a CT, and then which showed signs of obstruction with prolapsed, with herniated small bowel loops along with the mesentery and omentum. The size of the defect is around more than 12 centimeter size. And then we took him for emergency laparotomy. And the diameter of the sac is more than 12 centimeter with all. The diameter of the sac is of more than 12 centimeter with the viable small bowel loops around 30 centimeter. Yeah, with the viable small bowel loops and omentum, which was reduced initially, and then the defect was repaired, and then we did an onlay mesh repair with the Prolene. He was all right. This is a large defect, and then we fixed. We have put a Prolene mesh over the defect after the primary repair, and then all the hernial contents were reduced, and he was doing well after the surgery. And we have electively intubated him for 24 hours, and then extubated. He was doing well for 3 days, and after that, on 4th post-operative day, he had symptoms of again obstruction, and he had bilious vomiting. And we have put an RT. There was a lot of bilious drainage from the RT. And we did an emergency CT again, and then it showed herniation of bowel loops under the mesh. And again, we took him for re-laparotomy. There was obstructed jejunal loops. Again, all the loops were thoroughly checked, and then there was a near strangulation with after giving 100% oxygen, all the strangulated bowel loops became pink, and then all the contents were reduced. But there was a hypertrophy because of this hypertrophied sigmoid loop colostomy causing obstruction. And then we relocated the colostomy in the left hypochondric region by resecting the redundant colostomy with using linear GA staplers. And this stoma was relocated in the left hypochondric region. In concern for abdominal compartment syndrome, we did a laparostomy after the second surgery. After that, he was on ventilator, and then on third day again he had signs of hypotension, and then he continued to have fever, persistent sepsis, and then poor respiratory capacity, and then he had respiratory failure. On fifth day again, after the second laparotomy, we suspected suspected perforation because there is a bilious leak from the laparostomy site. And then we took him for surgery, and the jejunal perforation was there at the proximal 10 centimeter from the jejunum. And that jejunal perforation was we did a double stapler side to side anastomosis, and again laparostomy was done. After that, he was on ventilatory support in spite of all the broad spectrum antibiotics, ventilatory support, and then thorough nutritional support. He continued to have persistent fever, and then his sepsis was persisting, and he was on ventilator. And he had seizures, and there was because of this abdominal compartment syndrome, increased abdominal pressure, intra-abdominal pressure. He had cerebral hypoxia, and then decreased cerebral perfusion pressure, and he had seizures. He continued to have sepsis. He is on ventilator for around 3 weeks. After that, he was extubated, and he was discharged home later on after around 1 month of year. And after that, he had expired after 2 months of care at home. The take-home message from this case is any giant parastomal hernia with obstruction and abdominal compartment syndrome, there should be only a damage control surgery, which is the option is it's a laparostomy. It should never be combined with the component separation, or we should not do any primary repair when there is features of obstruction, or when there is abdominal compartment syndrome, because he is morbidly obese, with his weights, with his BMI of more than, it is around 34, BMI of more than 34, and his waist circumference is 98, and he is a smoker, alcoholic, and he's hard physical labor with a high risk and ongoing sepsis. It was difficult to manage this case, and almost most of the parastomal hernias, there are 50% chances of there is a 50% chance of getting parastomal hernia after stoma creation. Any patients with stoma always look for parastomal hernia on follow-up, and educate all the patients regarding the parastomal hernia. And teach them that a mild discomfort to severe abdominal discomfort can go for obstruction, and then if it is in strangulation, it is difficult to manage, especially in case of obese and when there are high risk factors. And if at all in any doubt on follow-up, it is better to do CT, because it is a best investigation, so that we can diagnose early, and then follow up, and then management will be easy. No, thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Now I would like to invite today's guest of honor, Dr. Ebenezer Benson, Chairman Tamil Nadu ASI, to deliver few words.
I think before I start, let's ask some questions, because I think Jayalal was raising his hand, and lot of, I think we will have some discussion for 10 minutes and 5 minutes, and then I can go.
Okay.
Please allow to unmute. Dr. Jayalal.
I am Dr. Arunachalam, sir.
Hello.
Hello, I am Dr. Arunachalam. Are you able to hear me?
Please, sir.
Please go on.
Please go on.
Yes, sir. In the first case, they removed the foreign bodies. It was 4, and whether any X-ray or any CT was done before discharge. One for the first case, and second case, the second case patient developed a obstructive hernia due to mesh. Why they have applied mesh for this case?
So we did cervical spine X-ray, which revealed the foreign body still inside. Few foreign bodies still inside, but
I want to know, still there are foreign bodies.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Which part
we couldn't find visually on the left anterior triangle on the left side, sir.
Oh, but they have given antibiotics and there is no.
Yeah.
infection.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
So he left out.
Yes, sir. We reassured the patient.
Nothing
And
will
he's on
happen.
constant follow-up. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Jayalal.
Yeah, I think it's a well presented, both the case and the well managed. The first case, you said you are expecting for intracranial tension to be increased.
Yes.
Why do you expect intracranial tension to be increased in this case?
Actually, in this case, if you ligate the internal jugular vein on the both sides, that can happen.
No.
But
Whenever you are presenting a case, the candidate should present according to the case only, index case only. You are not going to talk the theory. So you said in this case, you are expecting intracranial tension to be raised. Is there any scope for intracranial tension to be raised?
in this case, no, sir. No.
So now we will ask questions that if you are expecting intracranial tension to be raised, what are the options you have for the treatment? Suppose you are expecting intracranial pressure to rise, and what posture you will treat the patient in the post-operative period? What is the posture you adopt to the patient? So patient should be treated in an erect posture. I mean, but you should not erect, and no compressive bandage should be applied. And always can start on a spinal needle, put the spinal and aspirate the CSF fluid outside. So only when you have a two bilateral, when you have IJV ligation, there is 8% increase in the possibility of developing a head. So there is no possibility. So whenever that is very important when you are presenting a case in the examination, and don't put into unnecessary things which you are not expecting in the case, then it will be lead on to the some questions to be asked.
Understood.
Second case, it is a very tough case which is very well managed, and some of the statistics you shown is not absolutely right, but one thing you must remember whenever you are presenting a case, and you should have raised the history of what was the cause. Is that a permanent colostomy, and what was the reason for a permanent colostomy? You could see there is a anal stenosis. Is it a malignant condition, or you said the trauma? But trauma is always a repairable. Trauma is also, there is a possibility of doing that. So something you must have explained little more on what was the exact cause of the colostomy. And parastommal hernia can occur not only for a permanent colostomy, even for another temporary colostomy can occur, and it comes 30 to 40% USD. And as rightly asked by Dr. Arunachalam, so we would have also asked that why you prefer to use a mesh when you are doing a parastommal hernia, and if at all, then what type of mesh we will use normally.
Sir, we have used a Prolene mesh, sir. And we initially thought we repaired the primary. We repaired the defect, and then we have put the mesh, and then did the repair, sir.
So
it was an onlay mesh repair.
So
if it is an onlay mesh, it cannot be the reason for obstruction further. How it produce an obstruction then?
No, what happened to us because of the
patient was.
Yeah, you can say. The compartment syndrome, the sutures gave way, and under the mesh, the bowel had prolapsed.
He was obese, and he had abdominal compartment syndrome. So that the mesh after 5th post-operative day, after extubating, and we have started him in liquids, and then he started the signs of obstruction again. And
after the second surgery, you said you were kept on a laparoscopy. You are not done close the abdomen for in fear of abdominal compartment syndrome. But again, you said patient developed abdominal compartment syndrome.
Even
how a patient on laparoscopy, how he is developing abdominal compartment syndrome?
Sir, he had a poor respiratory. I think he still had a poor respiratory.
You are right, ma'am. But the definition when you are saying, you said the patient is abdomen is in a laparoscopy condition. Will it allow to abdominal compartment syndrome to form?
But then there was ongoing sepsis, and then he had.
Ongoing sepsis, a collection will come out. Only when abdominal compartment syndrome, when you are closing it, the pressure will build up.
This patient, when he was on ventilator, his abdominal pressure was normal. As when moment he was taken off the ventilator, his abdominal compartment cut and got into all the.
And also, I would like to add. Taylor, can you hear me?
Mute
the third attempt, you try to put a jejunum. Again, the jejunal opening you closed with a stapler. Because already you are on a colostomy and the patient is in a compartment syndrome. You should have just externalized the bowel and watch for the condition to improve. And what is the need for doing a stapler closure of that jejunal perforation? You are muted, ma'am.
You have to unmute. NDJH library, please unmute.
In the second surgery, we have relocated the stoma site, sir. So that on the previous sigmoid loop colostomy, which was very hypertrophied, and then it was causing obstruction, and that was taken out, and then the stoma was relocated.
Jejunal perforation. What you have done? You have done stapler for the general perforation also, you said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Stapler.
Why do you prefer a jejunal at this moment? Patient is in a bad moribund condition. You are taking as an emergency, and already there is externalization is there. Is it not enough? You just externalize the bowel, and is it necessary to put a stapler at this moment?
Scott, would you like to come in?
Yes, please. But
Yeah,
I have been muted.
Yeah, please. You unmute and come. Yeah.
Dr. Jailal, good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Thing is, in the 2013, it's a major road traffic accident, run over by a lorry, and he came in hypovolemic shock. Say about 8 to 10 units of blood was transfused, and he had got a major pelvic fracture, and so that we did a colostomy, cystostomy, and everything, and the pelvic is totally distorted, so that even the anal orifice won't admit the tip of the finger. So that is the thing. So whole the anal canal gets distorted because of the pelvic bone fracture. That's why this patient had actually we did a sigmoid colostomy, loop colostomy. It was not an end colostomy, but post-operatively once he survived and we resuscitated, we found it is totally distorted. This patient cannot use the anal orifice for normal defecation, and he was hanging on with the sigmoid loop colostomy. That is the answer for that. Why? Other thing is, the question is.
Sir asked about why we did.
Yeah, definitely we agree, sir. For the third surgery, actually there's a second surgery is delayed. We went for the second surgery in a delayed time, because by the time we went for the second surgery, the patient has developed all features of abdominal compartment syndrome with sepsis. Okay, and also, so that's why even after laparostomy, he continued to have high fever along with seizures. Seizures, we explained, maybe due to the raised intra-abdominal pressure, that will cause reduced cerebral perfusion pressure even, and cause hypoxia and seizures. That is the reason. And I agree, the third surgery, by the time he had a bile leak through the laparostomy wound, and definitely there is an option, I agree. Very moribund patient, sick patient, we would have exteriorized the bowel, simple exteriorization of the jejunal perf.
But excellent management. This, I think, no surgeon will be there to touch this case, but you have managed it very well. And the amount of care you have given is something, it is excellent. That shows the team effort you have and the dedication you have for this patient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulate.
Is it a compliment? Is it a compliment?
Yes,
yeah, it's a big compliment, sir.
Definitely, it's a compliment for the commitment with which they have done this case.
Thank you, sir. At this juncture, I mean, should appreciate our HOD, Dr. Sabu. He was dare enough to present this case in the ASI meet. He asked us to present this case.
Very good.
Dr. Parveen Bhatia to give a final comment on this.
No, I think you can go ahead. I was listening to it. I was enjoying it thoroughly. Very nicely managed. Yes, there are challenges on the way, but nicely managed. Best of luck. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I congratulate both of you for an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, now I would like to call Dr. Ebenezer.
Respected Chairman of the Tamil Nagarkoil ASI, Dr. S. Muthukarappan, Secretary of Nagarkoil ASI and Executive Committee Member of Tamil Nadu ASI, Dr. Ajin Manoa, past Chairman TNASI, Dr. A. Nagarajan, and IMA National Vice President, Dr. J. Jayalal, the Orator of the Day and past Governing Council Member, ASI, and Medical Director, Bhatia Global Hospital and Endosurgery Institute, New Delhi, Dr. Parveen Bhatia, and esteemed colleagues, especially Dr. P. Sundarraj, the Coimbatore ASI Chairman and the TNASI member, and Dr. Kanagavel, who is also connected here, and all the colleagues and members who are connected with us today on Zoom. I consider it as a privilege and honor to present the guest of honor address. The world is passing through the worst phase of the century due to the pandemic COVID-19, which has brought us all to a standstill for the past 3 to 6 months. And we are not sure then how long will it continue and when we will come out of it, because the graph has not flattened and it keeps on increasing. Globally, around 66 lakhs of people have been infected and around 4 lakhs have already lost their life. And in our country, we had our first case report on the 30th of January, And today we have crossed around 2,20,000 and 6,100 of our brethren have already lost. And Tamil Nadu also 26,500 people have already been infected and 210 have lost lives. And since March 8th, when we had our first case, many of our doctors and healthcare professionals have been infected and some have lost their lives. And we have started Unlock 1 also, and people are traveling here and there, and chances of us getting infected is also very high. And we as individuals have lost our financial resources. Because our workload has decreased to 1/3 to 1/4. And hospitals, as we run hospitals, we have to pay for staffs, EMIs, loans, bills, and all lot of things. So we are very much in loss. And we have an anxiety and fear of suffering from illness as we are in direct contact with the patient. As an association and an organization, we have lost our academic activities for the past 3 to 4 months. And we are only started doing some webinars. And so we are also, a lot of social activities also we have lost, and we have lost the camaraderie also for the past 3 to 4 months. As a chapter, the Tamil Nadu ASI, we had released a COVID guidelines booklet which was sent to all our members. And we also conducted a webinar on panel discussion on post-lockdown surgical practice last week. And it was very well appreciated. And PPEs were also donated to the city branches, which was given to the hospitals also. The National ASI, we have an excellent president, Dr. Raghuram, who was also with us last week. And he has been a champion of disaster management, and sections, chapters, and individuals also contributed. And we contributed more than 1 crore to partly to the PM Care Fund, and PPEs were distributed across the country. And sanitizers, which were donated by Amway, was also given to most of the state chapters. And ASI consensus on guidelines document, which answered 27 questions, were also given to all our members. The Nagarkoil ASI, which was founded in 2006, has done human service in the part of this country, spreading the ideals of ASI for the past 14 years. I thank the successive chairman and secretaries and all the members for taking the city branch to a higher level. And we have already received accolades from national and state chapter regularly. I warmly acknowledge the presence of the orator of the day, Dr. Parveen Bhatia, the medical director of Bhatia Global Hospital Endosurgery Institute, New Delhi. He is an excellent orator and a surgeon par excellence. And he has been appreciated well for his oratorial skills. And I had the opportunity to serve with him as a governing council member of ASI from 2013 to 2014, and where he regularly takes part in the discussions, and he has contributed a lot for the growth of ASI. And I really admire his rooftop garden, which he usually shares in our group also, and it's really beautiful and picturesque. Thank you for your wonderful presence and being a part of this meeting, sir. And I place on record our sincere appreciations to Dr. Shivakumar for arranging this meeting and agreeing to continue it till the end of lockdown, his contribution to continue our webinars regularly. And his oration has been highly attended and is one of the excellent orations in our branch. Thank you, Shiva, for your participation. And it's been nearly 3 months since we all met. I am really happy to see you, all of you, my brethren. And we must be privileged to thank the Almighty to keep us safe, as we are very, very important to the family as well as the fraternity at large. At this point of time, it is very important that we are safe and we all do all our activities safely. And bottom line is we should remain safe. And I pray Almighty that to keep us all safe during this pandemic and this should pass on soon. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Long live ASI, long live Tamil Nadu chapter, long live Nagargal ASI. And also I would like to, we have lost two of our stalwarts of ASI and Tamil Nadu ASI in the last 15 days. One is Professor M.G. Muthukumaraswamy, who is a professor of surgery, MMC, Madras Medical College, who was the Director of Medical Education, Tamil Nadu government, and was Vice Chancellor of Annamalai University. He served as the Honorary Secretary of ASI from 1991 to 92 and Chairman of the Tamil Nadu Pondicherry chapter in 1986 to 88. And he was awarded the Teacher of Teachers, Dr. B.M. Sundaram Avadanan Award also. And also Professor K. Shanmugha Sundaram was the Professor of Surgery, Coimbatore Medical College, and he was one of the architects of the Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry ASI. And he was a regular attendee to our conference in Tamil Nadu ASI still around a year back. And he was the founder treasurer of the Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry ASI from 1976 to 1982. And he was also the B.M. Sundaram Vadanam Best Teacher Award in 2017. I think we should be in silence in respect of this. Thank you everyone for the wonderful opportunity, and I request the chairman of the Nagargal ASI to take over.
Thank you, Dr. Ebenezer, for your nice and sweet speech. Now I would like to call upon the today's chairpersons, Dr. Rubandran sir and Dr. Sabu Jayasenan sir, to take over the oration.
Rubarde?
Yes.
I think you unmute Dr. Muba. Yeah.
I have the citation for Dr. Bhatia. Can I go ahead with that?
Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Siva, for inviting us to be the chairpersons today. Your orations are always excellent, and you bring very important people to give the oration. And today, no other than the legend, Dr. Praveen Bhatia is with us. A word to Dr. Bhatia, sir. I have been given this citation about you just now. I do not know how current it is, but please bear with me. What is written here is what I'm reading. If there are any discrepancies, please bear with us. Dr. Praveen Bhatia, MS, FRCS, FIGS, FMS, FCR. Is the head of Institute of Minimal Access Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, Institute of Robotic Surgery, Medical Director and Consultant Laparoscopic and Bariatric Surgeries, Sri Gangaram Hospital, Global Hospital and Endosurgery Institute, New Delhi. He is a governing council member of the Association of Surgeons of India and the Honorary Secretary of the Delhi State Chapter. Dr. Praveen Bhatia has many accolades to his credit. He was the organizing secretary of the North Zone ASICON CME on complications of surgery in 2009 at AIIMS. He holds ASI CME's monthly Global Laparoscopic Surgery Week and workshops. He was a co-organizing secretary of ASICON 2010 at New Delhi. He is on the editorial board of the Journal of Minimal Access Surgery and Surgical Clinics of India. In IAGS, he was the honorary secretary, vice president, North Zone executive member. He was the council member of the Delhi Medical Council. He is the author, co-author of many books, Laparoscopic Hernia Repair, A Step-by-Step Approach, Art of Endosuturing, Comprehensive Laparoscopic Surgery, and Non-Umbilical Laparoscopic End Reports. He is a publisher of Open Letter and e-newsletter. His field of interest is lap hernia, prepared international contacts and laparoscopic surgery, has invited faculty and operating faculty. He is the faculty of Ethicon Institute of Surgical Education in New Delhi. He is a mental member of the Obesity Surgery Society of India, ASI, IAGS, AMASI, CELSI, ELSA, SAGES. He is honored with International Federation for Surgery of Obesity Scholarship in Netherlands in 2005. He has delivered many prestigious state and national level orations in various associations. He has to his credit many awards and honors.
Correction.
Sorry.
You're not audible.
Khan Dabar Nasri. Am I now?
Now it's all right. Okay.
Okay. Of the Honorable former Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand at Bangkok. Medinews Distinguished Speaker of the Year 2010 at Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi. Vishit Chikita Ratna Award, outstanding contribution to the medical profession, and the society with the medical and medical association. Many articles in a wide range of journals, both national and international, and contributed as an author of chapters in many books. His mission and vision is to learn, relearn, and share the knowledge, provide world-class minimal invasive surgery to patients, rich or poor, at affordable costs. Mr. Chairman, I present to you Dr. Praveen Bhatia, who, for his exemplary academic and surgical, is being chosen to deliver Shiva Hospital Endowment Oration 2010 on There is Safety in More Safety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rubaran.
Hello. Sir, please invite Dr. Magellan to say a few words about Shiva's oration.
Sir, we invite you to deliver your oration.
Professor Bhatia, you are on the line.
Good evening, all. Good evening to all. It's my privilege and pleasure in introducing Dr. Shiva Kumar and Shiva Hospital in this webinar. Dr. Shiva, who needs no introduction, is a well-known, eminent laparoscopic surgeon who has created lots of laparoscopic surgeons due to his passion for teaching. Dr. Shiva did his MBBS in Al-Amin Medical College, Bijapur in 1996. He got his surgical training as assistant under Dr. Gopinath, Shankar Hospital, Kollam. He completed MS in Raja Muthiah Medical College, Annamalai University in 2003. In the year 2003 and 2004, under Dr. C. Palanivelu, Jammu Hospital, Coimbatore, qualified with diploma degree in basic and advanced laparoscopic surgery. He got endoscopy training in 2003 and 2004 for diagnostic and therapeutic procedures. Shiva Hospital. The year 1998 marks the beginning of Shiva Hospital at Puttur. It's a 24-hour operating clinic near the residence of Dr. T. Shivakumar. The hospital runs till now, especially for the local village people around Puttur, and medicines are supplied free of cost. Shiva Hospital.
In 2004, Shiva Hospital developed into a surgical center at Ithamuli with a clinic and a small operation theater. What is meant to be will always find its way. From what started as a small clinic in 98, destiny made the Shiva Hospital to be minimal access surgical center of today. Shiva Hospital, situated in West Coast Road, Ithamuli, a remote rural area of our district. It's a 50-bedded hospital having a plinth area of 20,000 square feet with a 2-storied building situated on an acre of land. It's a pure minimal access laparoscopic center wherein bariatric surgeries, metabolic surgeries, and other laparoscopic surgeries are performed. It has got twin modular theater with all facilities required for all cold and emergency surgeries. These are all the modular theaters. Intensive care unit. It has 9-bedded post-operative intensive care center with advanced monitoring facility, ventilator life support, and well-trained staffs. Emergency care unit, OP waiting area, 24 hours pharmacy, 24 hours lab, physiotherapy unit. The year 2014 marks the launch of ultra-modern medical services like chromoendoscopy, capsule endoscopy, high-definition laparoscopy system, 3D ultrasound, ERCP, high-definition colonoscopy, bronchoscopy, endoscopy unit. In the year 2015, Shiva Hospital began its joint venture with Lada Nursing Home, Kotar, Nagarkoil. Nagarajan sir. I take this opportunity to dedicate this Shiva Hospital oration to his friends, seniors, and well-wishers, and wish him and Shiva Hospital all success in the year to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Now, I think you have to unmute Dr. Parveen Bhatia. Yes, sir, you are on the line.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Can I have my presentations? Yes. I must say at the outset that it is an excellent opportunity to interact with you, and thanks to the technology that we are meeting today on an evening. And I must give all the compliments to the organizing team of Association of Surgeons of India, Nagarkoil City Branch. And special thanks to Dr. Shiva Kumar for giving me, honestly, the first opportunity to have an oration on Zoom. It is a virtual oration. We have been invited in person to do lot of orations, but this is the first oration which I am delivering on Zoom, on webinar, and that will be recorded throughout. And I am very, very thankful again to all the organizing team and of this association. You are doing an excellent job. All of us have seen that. And I wish great success in all your endeavors. And I must give my compliments to especially the younger ones who presented the case today and did a beautiful job. I bring greetings from Bhatia Global Hospital and Sir Gangaram Hospital. And I will be devoting next 45 to 50 minutes on the topic which is very, very close to me, and that is there is safety in more safety. I think in this COVID era, I would call this as COVID era, most important aspect is safety. Safety for one, ourselves, safety for our family members, safety for all our patients, and safety for the city, country, world, and globe, and so on and so forth. So I think the most important lesson which God wanted to give us is that we have to work in such a manner that the protocols work and ultimately we remain safe. And this kind of safety should be transmitted to our patients also. The most dangerous phrase in the language is that we have always done it this way. And in this in this presentation, I would be again and again emphasizing the role of safety. And believe me, there is a small story. As you know, that many people were discussing with me in the before the start of the Zoom session, that I have been writing the motivational stories in our global newsletter. And the small story is that there was a person who was carrying his son on the shoulder, and he was on a tightrope walk, and he was walking from one tower to another tower. And as he was walking, people were surprised that how can a person carrying his small son on the shoulder, and he is walking on a tightrope, and he is able to balance with his two hands, and it is too high the towers are. But as he walked and ultimately reached the other tower, everybody clapped. Everybody, most of the people took selfies from with this man, and then said that you have done a great job. We must admire that you have done a beautiful job. He said that, do you trust me? The people said, yes, we trust you. He asked that, do you think that I can go back from this tower to previous tower again? Everyone said, yes, why not? Once you have done it this way and you have done it so beautifully, you were carrying your son on your shoulder and you have been able to reach this tower, we trust you. We definitely trust you. He says that if you trust me so much, is it possible that I can have your son on my shoulder and then I can go back? And now everyone started thinking that, is it safe or not? Should we believe it or not? Should we have the trust or not? So thinking is, why did I tell this story? That ultimately there is a difference when we are working for our family members and when we are working for others. So thinking is that if that kind of trust can be built in the minds of the patient, I think there is absolutely clarity. Once the patients start trusting you and we start reciprocating the same trust because of our protocols, because of our safe practice, then they will also be able to give their children on our shoulders, and we can definitely walk from one tower to another tower. I am not going into much details of the COVID, which and it has been emphasized that all of us had never ever anticipated this kind of phase in our life. Nobody had globally. At least 500 doctors, for example, have been infected in Mumbai itself. In Delhi also, such grim situation is there, and all of us are fighting for the safety of our own, our family members, and then the country. And now, one battle, one war which was going on was with Corona, but another battle has started about the administration. And then Health Ministry today itself, this is a publication from today itself, the Health Ministry tells the Supreme Court that final responsibility is on healthcare workers to train themselves and be safe from COVID-19. So thinking is that yes, we have to believe on this, that there is safety in more safety. This is a excellent publication from Annals of Surgery, and it was in January 2020 that should zero harm be our goal. At that phase, when obviously this COVID era had not started, or it had started in Wuhan only, this publication was there that should zero harm be our goal. And again, one has to carry on thinking about two aspects: quality versus safety. Quality is the avoidance of a negative, safety is an avoidance of a negative outcome, and quality is the achievement of a positive outcome. So one has to make sure that we have to marry the safety as well as quality. I could see Dr. Shivaram's hospital, which had started in 1998 from a small, humble beginning, but he has reached that level. Now he has included the endoscopies and bariatric surgery and laparoscopic surgery. It is fantastic. Again, I must apologize for a negative connotation. Why I am speaking on this topic of there is safety and more safety, because this symmetry stone definitely touched my soul. And it is written that Mr. So-and-so, Deputy Superintendent of Police, father of so-and-so, had died because of the negligence of so-and-so hospital. So if that kind of situation has come, that people have started putting the stone in the cemetery, I think the movement has already been there. One move can start a movement. Can you imagine that these people in Odisha village, they are carrying a banner at the funeral of somebody that she has died because of the negligence of so-and-so doctor. So thinking is that somewhere we should introspect that somewhere there is a loss of trust which we had been enjoying for ages, for decades, but now that trust is missing. That belief and trust, definitely we have to rekindle that. And we had seen this kind of story in Assam when an elderly doctor had been beaten to death after the worker had died. Similarly, so much of, I would say, media presence of these kind of stories are there, but I'm not going into the details of it. But I would definitely love to go in a positive mode that, for example, now are you able to see that in this Formula One racing car, the driver has just a few seconds to change the tire, fuel the car, and the team has to do the best. For example, if any one member of the team says, sorry, sir, I could not change the tire or I could not fuel the car, the pilot is dead on the track. So thinking is that we as surgeons, we definitely are the captains, we are the pilots. So we have to work on a team, and then only we will be able to deliver the best. And I could see the beautiful teamwork when all of your members and your organization, that one could see that cases were also presented, then oration is also there, and chairperson, the secretary, everyone had a presence here today. Now in this, you can see the photograph of Senna. Senna, he died in a Formula One racing car in 1994. And can you imagine, the president of the Association of Formula One racing car had vowed that very day that failure is not an option. If a young person dies on a track, this should never ever happen again. And so much of safety precautions were taken after that. And you know that what is the level of Formula One racing car today. So same way, if our presidents of Association of Surgeons of India, as our governing council, if we also, and we have been doing it, we are focusing on safety, then failure is not an option. we should definitely work in such a way that we want that every patient is our son or daughter or father or mother or sister. Then only we will be able to get back the same trust which we had in the initial phase. Edwards Deming had beautifully summed up, in God we trust, all others must bring data. And can you imagine, in last February 2019 in Lancet, they had analyzed the global burden of post-operative death. We, the surgeons, I am not going into the COVID deaths at the moment. I will not be speaking anything about it. But before that era, the global burden of post-operative death was that this was the third greatest contributor after ischemic heart disease and stroke. The maximum number of people who died in the world was because of the ischemic heart disease, then the stroke, and then the post-operative death. That means 7.7% of all the deaths were because of the post-operative care. And the analysis revealed that the medical errors are the third leading cause of death in the developed countries, also in, for example, in USA. And this was a publication in which they had shown that every year, for example, total surgical procedures were of the order of 313 million, but total deaths within 30 days were of the order of 4.2 million. Means that more people were dying within 30 days of surgery annually than combined HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. So thinking is that we should introspect every minute that in what way we can become safe. And if there is a safety, there is safety in more safety. Similarly, it has been reported that approximately 44,000 to 98,000, these are the numbers from the developed hospitals. In America, they die in hospitals as a result of errors in care. And the complications after surgery occurred in approximately 25% of the patients, and crude mortality after major surgery is of the order of 0.5 to 5%. But the most important aspect is that half of these deaths had been occurring because of the surgical care. And half of the deaths which were occurring were preventable. And but most common analysis which was done was that all said and done, human mind is human mind. Even if we have developed so much, but the principles of surgical safety were inconsistently applied even in the most sophisticated settings. And that is the reason that still people are still dying, and because of the surgical. And 3 to 4% are harmed by the care which is supposed to help them. 7.7% are exposed to a serious medication error. Why I am highlighting this is that we, whether we are sitting in New Delhi, whether we are sitting in Nagarcoil, whether we are sitting in New York, we have to analyze ourselves that how can we improve. Can you imagine that the Joint Commission had done a statistics analysis, and survey was done, and in which it was found out that each year 1,500 to 2,500 wrong site surgeries are done. And when the survey was done, approximately 21% of more than 1,000 hand surgeons reported at least once they had done a wrong surgery. Would you be surprised that surgery, and that too hand surgery, and 21% of 1,000, more than 1,000 surgeons believed that they had done a wrong surgery? And why? The safety of the science of safety has matured, and why these have been happening. I think we should go into slighter details about because of the communication breakdowns, because of the diagnostic error, because of the poor judgment and inadequate skill set. So thinking is that we have to make sure that either because of omission or commission or error of execution or error of planning or deviation from the standard of care, one does harm the patient. Can you imagine? I did not want to portray this, but this is a young lady who had presented in one of the periphery centers, and then ultimately she was referred to All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I'm thankful to Dr. Arvind Kumar for sharing this slide. Can you imagine that she had presented with gastroenteritis, and at that place outside Delhi, they had given the IV fluids, and after the IV fluids, she developed the peripheral. You can see the picture of all the 4 limbs, though she was saved. But can you imagine, when in retrospect, the analysis was done, they found that in the IV fluids, there was an ergot, and that had caused such a disastrous complication. Similarly, this is one of the major hospitals in which some surgery was done, but because of the mask, one can see that maybe ETO was not done, or maybe the chemicals were sticking on to the mask, and that had left the mark on the patients. So our thinking is that don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. I think this is very, very important in today's era, all the more that we should tell our younger colleagues also that decisions are more important than incisions. All of us have been taught in our Maulana Azad Medical College, post-graduation, or afterwards also, we have learned that when not to operate. Today also, can you imagine, the discussion is going on that I can do laparoscopy by covering the trocars and gas leak will not be there, and so on and so forth. I think this is very, very important, that are we taking the adequate precautions? If there is an emergency, yes, operate by open method rather than causing a challenge in the post-operative patients. There was a publication recently that if the elective surgery is done in this COVID era also, even 25% of the death rate is possible. So we have to be very, very careful. And again, a very small lesson which all of us had learned is that a split second becomes eternal. What do you mean by this? For example, if I am doing a cholecystectomy, laparoscopic cholecystectomy, and if my attention is diverted, if I'm talking on mobile phone and the distraction leads to disaster, that can be challenging. And now this was a plane, all of us would remember, they had landed on the river. And why? Because he had taken a split-second decision that he cannot go back to LaGuardia Airport, and he had saved, the pilot had saved all the passengers. Why? Because the decision-making was very, very important. I would request our younger colleagues to watch this movie called Sully, and then they would realize that what is the importance of taking the decisions. The timely decision, the split-second decisions, they are very, very important. And I would just comparing why and how we can improve ourselves. For example, do you think that surgery has become as safe as aviation model? If we compare it, the odds of dying in an air crash is 1 in 10 million, and odds of dying in a hospital were of the order of 1 in 300. When I boarded, now I would not say in last 3 months, all of us have not traveled, but when I used to board the flight, then on the, for example, Indigo flight, it was written, and I took the photograph, that flying is a serious profession. Do not carry your worries beyond this point. And this would always ignite me, especially my fellows in Sir Gangaram Hospital and Bhatia Global Hospital. I would always request them that please do not listen to your mobile phones. Switch off your mobile phones or put them on vibratory modes, because distractions can lead to disasters. For example, these surgeons, you can imagine, they are doing the bariatric surgery, but they are playing the match also, and they are seeing the baseball match. So thinking is, no patient should be, why we are losing this trust is because of the attention. And I would say that if, for example, if we have to improve, even if we improve by one step, that will make hell of a difference. Now, in this small poster, one can see that if some work is expected and it is expected to be 1, and if I go extra mile and I start doing 1.01 every day, so if I make it into 365 days, that means this is the number. And if I was expected to deliver 1, but I deliver 0.01 less, so into 365 days, and this number becomes this. So our thinking is that one should definitely believe on the details. Attention to detail is very important. Today also, can you imagine, in laparoscopic surgery, even Jacobius had told one century back in 1910 that it is the puncture itself that causes risk. But today also, we know, because of the Viris needle, because of the battered abdomen, because of the trocars, still the intestines are being injured, and that can lead to lot of challenges. So thinking is that to err is human, to refer is divine. Especially our younger colleagues, one should not ever deny that if for example, if some complication has occurred, then we should not cover it up. If we cover it up, it is unpardonable. And causing an injury is a mistake. Misdiagnosing is a negligence. Mismanaging is a crime. I would put it in a very strong language. So, for example, if we are doing laparoscopic surgery, please, for God's sake, pray. Then either you are using the Viris needle at the palmer's point, or when you are going in, then the camera person should always be trained in such a manner that all entries and all exits must be shown, and one should not leave any chance for the herniation to develop later on. We should always close all the defects 10 millimeter or more. Can you imagine that this is one of the patients who had been done sleeve gastrectomy outside, and then patient was referred to us and with the repeated vomiting. And when we saw the patient repeated vomiting, we got the CT scan done. We went in with laparoscope, and you can see the aftermath, because the surgeon, the senior surgeon, must have left the abdomen with the younger surgeons, and they must have taken the cannula out just like that. In a split second, it becomes eternal. The intestines are sucked out because of the pressure, and that intestine remains onto the peritoneal cavity and onto the anterior abdominal wall, and that can lead on to such a challenge. So thinking is that we should make sure that our younger colleagues also never take the cannula out. This is a small idea, small thought, which I am emphasizing, that every small step matters. I especially tell my younger colleagues, ek bhi number katna nahi chahiye. What I mean to say, then when you are doing the surgery, please make sure that no mistake should occur, and we should have learned from the mistakes which have already been made. Remember that life's greatest lessons are usually learned at the worst times and from the worst mistakes. Today is the time. For example, I would put this small video clipping that even if the laparoscopic appendicectomy is being done, but this was a patient post appendicectomy, and the patient presented with pain, abdomen afterwards, and fever, and the fever continued. And when we got the patient, then we got the CT scan done, and CT scan, and we did the diagnostic laparoscopy. And on diagnostic laparoscopy, we found this foreign body, retained foreign body after even appendicectomy. I am always surprised that how the surgeon today, in today's era, would leave such a long rolling gauze inside the abdomen, and the patient continued to visit the surgeon in the post-operative period, but surgeon never got the CT scan done, never had the index of suspicion of whether foreign body has been left or not. That means in the theater also, they were not having that kind of protocol that yes, one has to check, recheck, cross-check, counter-check, check and check, and then only we will not make these mistakes. Our thinking is whether we take the suture in or we take the needle in, the surgeon has to announce the needle in, suture in, needle out, suture out, and so on and so forth. Then only we will be able to make less mistakes. So again and again, I am re-emphasizing that life wants you to win. Please get out of your own way. Most of us, I would say, these kind of challenges are iatrogenic. We should not believe, we should not have that kind of attitude. No, it is a simple lab chole, simple surgery. No, nothing is simple. No surgery is minor, only surgeons are minor. Surgery is an attitude and it should be taken in that manner. And I don't know how many of us know what is Kaizen. Kaizen is that continuous improvement. And one small, this is a Japanese word, and it means that if one small step can change your life, if we start analyzing, if we start thinking that how can I improve, how, and only improvement is that I have to introspect. So if I do the introspection every now and then, after every surgery, after my every act, then only I can improve, and then only I will be able to make a difference. I would say, especially for our younger colleagues, that I ask them whenever they come to my hospital, other surgeons also, observers also come to Gangaram Hospital or to Bhatia Global Hospital, I ask them, you want to become good or great? And most of the times, most of the younger colleagues, they say that, yes, we want to become great. But again, I must tell you that I always tell them that to be good, anticipate one step, to be great, anticipate 3 steps. Surgery is nothing but anticipation. If we are able to anticipate, when the why is clear, the how is easy. When we tell our younger colleagues that this is the purpose of using the, for example, exteriorization, and this is the purpose of stapling at that stage. So if they understand that why the intestine has to be exteriorized or why the stapling has to be done, then only they will be following the protocol, then only they will be doing the best for the patient. And how? Now I shall be still devoting slight time that again and again, our thinking is, please, when we are operating, always carry on thinking that, will I be able to give my 100%? Am I giving my 100% or not? And if there is any doubt, there is no doubt. Means, for example, in this small video clipping, I would just show that we are doing sleeve gastrectomy. I know that a lot of surgeons from your branch also are doing bariatric surgery. If we are doing sleeve gastrectomy and we are firing the blue stapler, and at the last firing, there will be some surgeons who will carry on thinking that whether I should just apply the clip on this or I should make another staple fire. Again, I tell my younger colleagues, please do not even think. When there is doubt, there is no doubt. Fire a stapler, because all of us know that there is safety in more safety. If we do not fire the stapler, if we save the cost of one cartridge of 10,000 rupees, it will become so expensive for the patient that you cannot imagine. So again and again, there is safety in more safety. Again, talking about the bariatric surgery, all of us know that bariatric surgery, the chances of causing thromboembolism are very high because of their disease, because of their obesity, because of slightly prolonged surgery. And after bariatric surgery, the symptomatic deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism is as high as 6.4%. And bold study also revealed that 73% of the patients can develop DVT and pulmonary hypertension after embolism after discharge. So most of the times, all of us have seen that actual incidence is underreported. And then if the surgeon is on a denial mode, he says, oh, I have done so much of bariatric surgery. Not many of my patients have, or any of my patients has had pulmonary embolism. I think he is fooling himself. Pulmonary embolism is found in 8 of the 10 autopsies post-bariatric surgery. So why not take precautions? And precautions would mean whether we give them the compression devices, or we should always calculate the risk factor by Caprini score model. And then we should give either the low molecular weight heparin before and we religiously continue this for 28 days so that even one mark should not be cut out of all our practice. And we deal with these kind of patients who are having a weight of maybe 300 kg or more than 300 kg or BMI of 81 kg. So if I cause a small challenge in one of these patients, definitely the name of the bariatric surgery will go down, and the patient can die of pulmonary embolism on day 7 or day 10 or afterwards. So why not take these precautions in every situation, every case? Why should it not become a protocol? Especially for my younger colleagues, I would put it this way, that can you imagine when Ronald Reagan was shot, he was taken to a small hospital, district hospital, because he was close by. And the thoracic surgeon saw him, and he immediately said that after induction, he told his fellows to open the chest. And the chest was opened, and ultimately Ronald Reagan was saved. Then afterwards, the press, the news media, they asked him that how could it be that the president of the country has been brought to you in a district hospital, not in a major hospital, and still you relied on your fellows or younger colleagues and you asked them to open the chest, and then you took control of the situation. He says protocols must be respected. What I mean to say, that we have been doing it day in and day out with this kind of format. I have 100% trust on my fellows, whether the patient is president of USA or a patient is my father or my sister or anyone. We have been following this protocol, and that is the reason that we have become safe. So again, I would put it this way, that there is safety in more safety. A mistake repeated more than once is a decision. I think this is very, very powerful motivation that we should all learn from our mistakes. I am not going into the much details of it, that all of us have seen such kind of patients, such kind of x-rays. Now, can you imagine? Post-cesarean, this patient had been going to the gynecologist, same gynecologist again and again with the pain abdomen. But never ever she got the investigations done. And then when she came to us, we got the x-ray done, and x-ray reveals this. And then we got the CT scan done. And then we went in for diagnostic laparoscopy. And then after doing the diagnostic laparoscopy, we could see the long artery forceps, but it had, by that time, even after 2 years, it had not caused any injury onto the intestine or to any structure. And that ultimately we could manage the patient well, and patient did well. So what I mean to say, these kind of situations will come, should not come, but they are coming. Similarly, 7 years post hysterectomy, one can see the CT scan, one can see the artery forceps, and such situations are there in periphery, in centers, in major centers also. So again, for younger colleagues, I would say that please, when you go at night, carry on introspecting and carry on. Please read this book by Atul Gawande, the neurosurgeon at New York. he had written that checklist manifesto. And again, for example, in flights also, it has been found that they have the checklist of every small step, and then only the chances of accidents are reduced. In this, they had reported in NEJM also that checklist was found to reduce the rate of post-operative complications and deaths by more than 1/3. So thinking is that if, for example, checklists are not there, and especially our younger colleagues, I would say that please learn from these near miss injuries. The Indigo flight, SpiceJet flight, they were told from ATC that they are facing each other and they are going to collide. But the pilot in Indigo flight had heard and he read back also that, yes, I can see the SpiceJet coming. So if you are, for example, some instruction is given to you, and if you repeat the instruction that this is the instruction which you have learned and you are now taking care of, that will be the best answer. So thinking is communicate, 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 over communicate. We have seen the pilot and the co-pilots, they are having the checklist, they are communicating with each other, they are checking every point, then they check with the people on the flight also that please close the door, and she would always announce that I have closed the door and I have cross-checked the other door. Other crew member has also cross-checked, and now we can take off. So that is the way that we will be able to improve ourselves. And I would request our younger colleagues, especially our younger colleagues, that if you want to eat an elephant, how do you eat an elephant? You eat bit by bit. Similarly, how do you do a major surgery? Break them into small steps. And as you must have seen in my YouTube channel also, 10 steps of sleeve gastrectomy, 10 steps of TP, 10 steps of TAPP. So our thinking is that break them into small steps, write the checklist, and then again follow that and check, recheck, cross-check, counter-check. Then only we will be successful. We have been, all of us have seen this WHO checklist, surgical checklist, but how many of us follow that? Our thinking is that we should not copy paste. We should think, we should become the cerebral laborers rather than manual laborers. And there are no mistakes, only lessons. If that kind of attitude is there, then only we'll be able to make a difference. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. If we start thinking that I am now this age and how can I improve? And I have been closing the abdomen with this method only. Why should I improve? I think we will never be able to make a difference. So the thinking is the will must be stronger than the skill. And if we follow that if we have a will to unlearn, learn, and relearn, then only we will be giving the benefit to the patient. And no one can motivate you if you are not willing to do it for yourself. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to have first ever oration on webinar on Zoom mode. Thank you very much, ASI Nagarcoil and Dr. Shiva Kumar, for taking this kind of exercise late in the evening. Thanks a lot. May God bless you all. I know that I had told Dr. Shiva Kumar also, if there are any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Are we together? Hello?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. This is Dr. Sabu. We enjoyed your lecture, oration. It was a fantastic lecture, and we really enjoyed. And your safety is more safety. We really enjoyed it, and I hope many of us and many of the younger surgeons take it up and be safe always. Thank you so much for the oration.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. God bless
Very
you.
much, sir.
God bless you.
Hand it over to the chairman now.
Sure.
Thank you very much, sir, for your excellent presentation. It was very useful to the younger generation also. So now I would like to invite Dr. Sivakumar to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, one and all. First of all, I would like to thank the ASI branch of Nagarkoil for giving us the opportunity to conduct our Siva Hospital oration via this webinar. I express my special thanks to Dr. Muthukarpan, the chairman, and Ajin, the secretary of making this happen. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. J. Ebenezer Pensam, chairman TN chapter of ASI, for honoring this webinar with his valuable presence. I shall also express my heartily vote of thanks to our chairperson, Dr. Rubaran sir, Dr. Sabu Jaiseran sir, for enlightening us with their tremendous knowledge and experience. I consider it as a great privilege to express this vote of thanks to the star of the day, Dr. Praveen Patia. I take this opportunity to disclose this, sir. I have always been a huge admirer and fan of your speech, your vocabulary, and the way of yours sweep the whole crowd by their feet. I have been waiting so long to bring you all the way down to our hometown. In fact, he was very generous to accept our invitation on the very first call. We had all the arrangement ready to bring him down south, but unlikely due to the current situation, we have limited your speech to webinar. I shall promise to you, we'll invite you for the more grand occasion in future years. Once again, I express my hearty thanks to you, sir. I also thank all my seniors, friends, colleagues, and delegates for being a part of this and making this grand event successful. And I think so, we even all the program of our oration, we never have a question and